My name is Alexander Garcia, realtor and entrepreneur.
My name is Carlos Gonzalez, and I'm the Real Estate Amigo. This is a podcast where our mission is to inspire and empower our Latino community.
And welcome to Latino Talks.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? What's happening? Alex, my brother from another mother. It's so good. It almost sounded like I was about to cuss, but I didn't. I mean, it sounded kind of weird, but you are my brother from another mother, and I am so happy to be doing this with you on our second episode.
Come on, baby.
How do you feel after you heard us on that first one? Give me your feedback.
I mean, we're always our worst critic, right?
Yeah,
so,
of course.
I watch myself for the first time. I'm like, oh man, I could have done that better. Why was I doing this on the table? I can hear everything on this microphone.
Right.
Sometimes there was a couple of times I could hear myself breathing heavy. I'm like, oh gosh, man, I'm that guy. But I think overall, man, it's like, hey, it's our first episode. Can't beat ourselves up too bad.
Right.
We're having fun, and
Right.
at the end of the day, that's what I tell myself. We're two guys just hanging out.
We're just
having
hanging
a
out.
conversation, having bro talk.
Yeah, bro talk, exactly. That could be another podcast.
Bro talk.
Bro talk. Yeah, it's funny because when I first saw the first few videos, I told my wife, I'm like, man, I look fat. I look horrible in that video. And she's like, you look like you. And I'm like, oh my
So
goodness.
you're saying I'm fat?
That's the worst thing I could have heard. She's like, no, you look good. You look good. You look like you. I'm like, oh Jesus, downloading the Peloton app, ordering the bike, gotta do so, and that's something that we're gonna talk about down the road. Health
and
wellness,
Yeah.
everything around that. Because that's something that I really need to focus on now that I'm.
Well, I think you look great, brother. Again, we're our biggest critic, man. You're always going to be harder on yourself.
Thank you, my brother. But you know what? One of the things that I noticed is that now that we are in the 40s range,
right.
it's a very different
Early
ball
40s.
game. Early 40s, yeah. I'm not there yet, but almost. But it's very different. Years ago, I could do a certain workout and I would know the results that I would get, and I forget what comedian it was that said, I work out 5 times a week, 2 hours a day just to look overweight, and that's, and that's, again, that's going to be, and we're just throwing like a little teaser. That's going to be something that we're going to talk about down the road.
Yep.
And supplements and different strategies to be at our best. I guess one of the goals for the podcast is that we want to make sure that we are the best version of ourselves, physically, emotionally, financially, in our relationships,
Yep.
spiritually.
Yep.
So I think we had a great first episode.
Yeah.
In my honest opinion.
Okay.
And I think we had a great first episode. Like you say, I'm a very harsh critic of myself, and I'm like, oh, I stumble here, I stumble there. I could have said this differently. And you're like, oh, it's because I had this thing in my in my eyes.
Yeah.
But I thought it came out very well because again, it was the first episode, and we really didn't have a specific topic. In today's episode, we do want to segue into our series that we're going to starting on the next episode, which is going to be entrepreneurship. So we do want to start segueing into that. But, the first episode, we're just laying the foundation and just kind of getting the ball rolling per se. However, one of the really interesting things that happened during that episode is you were talking about stuff that you learned from your dad,
Right.
and it was really cool because you were talking about how you learned some good stuff, but at the same time some could we say that like manners, like would it be considered like manners or like ways of doing things that are probably not the best ways?
Right. Habits.
Habits. Yeah. That's the word that I was looking for. Habits. So I think that's something that we have to go a little bit deeper on, because one of the reasons that we're doing this podcast, one of the reasons that, we're here on a Saturday night. No, just kidding. It's a Tuesday or what? I don't even know what day it is. I've been traveling all week. Thursday.
Carlos just got back from Florida.
I just got back from Florida.
Yeah, and I talked to you last night. You were super tired, bro.
I was out. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I was out. It's because it's 3 hours ahead over there, and so I think we talked like around 8 o'clock at night, and I'm like, dude, it's like my 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons we do this is because they say that there are two ways that you can learn. You either learn, the best way that you can learn something is by someone telling you, hey, this is how I did it. Don't make the same mistakes that I did. Here are the tools so that you can be successful. That's one way.
Right.
And the other way, which is, the way most of us learn, just by trial and error.
Just being a big fudge up.
Yeah, exactly.
Making a ton of mistakes.
Putting our foots in our mouth, all the time, and just trial and error, and it doesn't have to be that way, and that's why we're doing this, so that being Latinos, being young Latinos, that you're a first generation American. I became an American being here in the U.S., and so it's one of those things that we've had to go, and I'm sure that if you and I had to go through a lot of things, there's hundreds and thousands. I don't want to say millions. I'll be like that joke, like that meme that I see from President Biden, trillion, billion,
making up some weird numbers.
1 trillion billions. Yeah. But there's a lot of us that are probably on the same boat.
Right.
So that's why we're doing this as well, so that we can make sure that this becomes a community. And I know that I throw that word a lot, but so that this becomes a community where we're all sharing best practices, so that we can be the best versions of ourselves. So it was very, very interesting, when you were talking about the lessons that you learned from your dad, because it got me thinking that, when we were kids, well, at least when I was a kid, and I'm pretty sure that's also your case, I never said, when I grow up, I want to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
When I grow up, I want to be a realtor. I mean, it's just things that it kind of
unfolds, kind of.
It kind of unfolds. It finds you on the way.
Right.
So that's something that I really wanted to touch on, so that we can to get the episode started, because I think it's important to know and to share with our audience, how it was that we ended up becoming entrepreneurs. I know your story, and it's a great story, and that's what it would be great for you to share with our audience. And how did Alex get to this point where he's a business owner, realtor? Because in the beginning, back in your high school days, you wanted to be something completely different.
Right.
But I'll let you take over that and share that part.
For sure. Trevor, if you could do us the lovely favor, getting that time clock going.
Oh, yes, please.
We love you, brother. But yes, to answer your question, and I think I may have shared that last episode briefly, may have touched on it.
Yeah, maybe.
But originally, I wanted to be a high school principal. And so I had a great relationship with my principal. He was just like one of those guys who just was athletic. He played basketball with us. He was funny.
Right.
And he was just very personable. And so and also what helped was my mother was a teacher. She was a preschool teacher. And so I always saw her, the fact that she, during the summer, she would work, because teachers have summers off. And so she'd spend time with us. And I'm like, man, that's a really cool job. Like, I don't know if I want to be a teacher, but I like being like the director. I like being in charge. And
the alpha male in the
being
room.
in the office and kind of making the orders and stuff. I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Right.
So I remember asking my junior year in high school, and I said, hey, how much do you make? Because I know teachers weren't making that much,
Right.
and I know it's a lot of work being a teacher. And at that time, I think he was making like $80,000 a year, and back then that was in
We're like, whoa.
1997. I just gave up my age, But back then, there was a lot of money. So I was like, dude, that's crazy. You know, I'm gonna be a millionaire. And so that's what I went to school for. I went to San Diego State, got my degree, majored in Spanish, minored in English, and I wanted to teach ESL, English.
As a second language.
Second language, yeah.
Right.
And I also just wanted to improve my Spanish because my Spanish sucked. And so, anyways, graduated. Fast forward, right after college, started substitute teaching. And doing a lot of middle school substitute teaching. I was only 23. So it's a 23-year-old substitute teacher, man. And it was just like, it was weird. I was just like, this is, especially in high school, because I still felt that they weren't that far in age for me. And I was like, this is, and even they would be like, how old are you? You know, Mr. Garcia? I'm like, Mr. Garcia. That sounds so weird.
I don't know how that sounds. I don't know how to feel about that.
It was just weird, yeah. And so I'm like, okay, I got to get used to this. But at the end of the day, I learned that I didn't have the patience with kids that were just being reckless and talking back. They wouldn't talk back to me. Surprisingly, I thought that I was going to have it, but there was just like a lot of just arguing with each other and all that. And I was like, okay. And so after a couple months, I was just like, this is not for me. I can't do this, you know. And I don't want to be a teacher first, because you usually have to be a teacher first or a counselor first, and then kind of work your way up.
Right.
And the pay wasn't that good, and then you like a lot of teachers have to take work home with them. And you
grading papers.
So you're working all day, man. And so, so one of my cousins at the time, my cousin Eva, who's in lending right now.
Right.
She's the one that she's like, hey, what do you think about real estate? You know, and this was right before the market crashed, and people were like, you know, every realtor was just killing it, making tons of money,
driving Corvettes.
yeah. And so I'm like, oh, that looks nice. Like, that's the lifestyle I want, you know. Choose your own hours, and you know, of course, the idea of being in essence, it's kind of you are an entrepreneur. You're running your own business. You create your own hours. I said that is appealing. I like that. So got my license, passed the test, and did it for about a year. Had a couple deals, and then boom, the market crashed.
Yep.
And so I know you experienced that too, because you got in, I think, a year before I did, right? Maybe a year or two? A couple years before me.
Yeah. Oh, man. I started like in 2002.
Yeah.
I was working at a telemarketing company, selling credit cards and selling all sorts of weird stuff. And my stepdad was a partner at a mortgage company. And he's like, you should really come over and you know, see how things are on my end. You know, see you know, take a look at my industry and see if that's something that you like. And for me, real estate was always very temporary. So the way I thought about it was, I'm gonna do this so that I can pay my way through college, and then, because you know, growing up in Mexico and my grandfather and my mom and everyone would be like, no, you got to go to school, you got to go to college, and then once you graduate from college, you're gonna have so many opportunities, and the world is gonna be yours, that kind of thing. So I always had that mindset, and I started in real estate so that I could kind of afford to pay my way through college. But so it was a very part-time kind of situation. And I started on the mortgage side, and then after being, there were, I don't know, like 20, 30 loan officers, and then one day they came up to me and they're like, hey, so I guess, we don't have a realtor in the office. You want to be the realtor? And I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. I was kind of just getting familiar with the industry. And same thing, I had a few closings, and my career as a real estate agent was starting to take off, to the point that I said to myself, you know what, should I drop out of school, or, should I continue this path? And right around then, boom, the market crashed. Yeah. So I continued, my education. I was almost getting ready to graduate. I think I graduated from San Diego State like in 2007, somewhere around there. 2006, 2007. Okay. But
right around the same time I did. Yeah. I think I was 2006. Yeah.
So, right around there, maybe.
San Diego State?
San Diego State. Maybe we run into each other in Storm Hall.
Probably Storm Hall, man. Now you're bringing back some memories, man. What was the name of the cafeteria area? Was it Monty's?
Shoot, I don't even remember. I've been wanting to go back to the campus just to
Yeah.
see how it looks nowadays
Yeah,
because they built a lot of stuff around it.
Yeah, tuition's crazy now too, bro. Because I think tuition
Right.
back then was like I want to say like $1,500 a semester.
I used to pay when I first
Maybe
started.
2,000?
When I first started, it was funny because I used to pay $666
Oh, gosh.
per semester. I
That's
think
an
it was,
easy number to remember.
yeah, that's why it was easy. This was in 2002,
Okay.
2002, 2003.
Got it.
So here I am. I'm like, all right, the mortgage industry crashed, but I'm still gonna, I'm sticking to my plan, and I graduate. First of all, it gets very weird because I'm like, man, I have so many credits, and I was going for a bachelor's in science and economics.
Right.
And one day, I meet, I'm like, I have so many credits. I'm taking all sorts of classes that have nothing to do with my major. The description of clouds and the geography of clouds and weird stuff like that. And although I from those weird classes that I took maybe when we get into talking about philosophy and religion and stuff like that, I did take some interesting classes that gave me some really cool perspectives, and we can share some of those. But I was all over the place. So I remember that I went to go sit down with the counselor, and she's like, "Oh, you already have enough credits to graduate." And I'm like, all right, then I'm not coming back. That's it. I'm dropping from my classes, and that's how I ended up graduating, from college, and
Right.
I remember that, my family was like, hey, do you want to do the whole thing where you walk? And I'm like, no, just give me my
ceremony.
diploma.
Yeah.
The ceremony. I'm like, no, just give me my diploma. I got to go find the job because now the world is my oyster,
Yeah.
I have the world on my fingertips. And, you probably know where this is going. I started knocking on doors and nobody's hiring.
Right.
Nobody's hiring. And
What was your degree in again?
economics.
Economics. Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
So
what were you trying to get a job in? Like what were you?
something financial
banking
industry related. Yeah, exactly. So I end up getting a job for San Diego National Bank. It was a local bank back then.
That was what they changed it now, right? I think it's U.S. Bank.
Yeah, it's U.S. Bank
now, right?
Yeah, they went under when all the banks were going under. Like,
Right.
no, actually, no, they went under. I want to say like 2007-ish.
Yeah, like
somewhere
right
around.
after the market crash.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. They ended up going under a few years after the market crash, and then they got bought by U.S. Bank.
Right.
But I started as a part-time teller and that kind of thing, and I started moving my way up, just in the company, and I landed kind of like my dream job, and after 2-3 years in, I got the job that I wanted. The pay was horrible still, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, especially being in San Diego, how can people afford this kind of thing?
Right.
But I remember that, but it was a really cool experience, and it was real estate related as well, and it gave me some really good background as far as my real estate career goes and entrepreneurship.
So it kind of helped launch you into
Exactly.
into your real estate career.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember because our office was in downtown, and I had a badass office, like in the 7th floor, water views, the whole thing. But I remember, looking out, in to the bay and being like, you know what, like this is not what I want.
You didn't want the views to the bay?
Well, the job that tied me to the views. I mean, I
okay,
do want the views to the bay, but there was an emptiness.
Because you made it sound very appealing, man.
yeah, exactly.
So what was it specifically that like was not filling your cup?
I think it's just, I mean, it's gonna sound very cheesy what I'm about to say.
Say it,
But
bro.
I think it was just my entrepreneurial spirit.
Got it, okay.
It's like, you know what?
So you didn't want to work the 9 to 5?
I don't want to work the 9 to 5. When I'm sitting down at parties in groups and people are talking about, well, if I work 2 extra hours a day, then I'll get 1 extra vacation. You just lost me. Like,
Yeah.
all right, like I'm just not built for that. And I don't know
Right.
if it's like an entrepreneurial gene
Right.
or whatever. And I remember that I said, you know what, this is not it. And so I quit.
Right.
And I quit. And I remember that, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but and this is my advice, and this is more like my opinion, but it's also my advice.
Right.
I don't believe in giving 2-week notices, because when they're gonna let you go, they don't give you a 2-week notice.
That's
They're
That's
just like,
true.
right, sorry, but get your stuff, and the company's closing, or we're restructuring. And so I remember that I went up to my boss and I'm like, hey, you know what? I quit. And she's like, no, you're not quitting. Go back to your desk and let's talk after lunch. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not coming back on Monday. And she got mad at me, man, and of course. But, and 2-3 months later, the bank ended up going under, which was crazy.
So it was a good move. Good move.
It was a good move. And so, but I thought, you know what, maybe I just need a different job, or, so what I ended up doing is I ended up getting a job at another bank. I was there for 3 months. One of my buddies was like, dude, jump back into real estate. Like, you have so much experience, because I was also probably like, 25, 26, somewhere around there. And he's like, dude, you got tons of experience, jump back into real estate. Come, let's work together. And it was my buddy Steve. Shout out to my buddy Steve. And so I took that leap of faith. I'm like, all right, let's jump into the deep end. And it's been an amazing ride.
Nice,
It's been an amazing ride. But it's one of those things where, we don't say, when I grew up, I want to be a real estate agent. I want to be an entrepreneur. And the thing, and here's the thing, I didn't like the 9 to 5, not because I don't like working the hours, but I like being in control of my own hours.
Right.
Because, when you become an entrepreneur, what you end up finding out is that you're actually putting a lot of hours,
Right.
Way more hours. People say, oh, and you probably hear this all the time, oh, you real estate agents, you're probably just hanging out and
Drinking
then
margaritas.
and then you get a call, and then then you go show a property and you just made $20,000. Like, it's
Right.
nothing like that. It's
Right.
a roller coaster, you know. And
Well, I think it is in the beginning, in all fairness, in my opinion. I think it is in the beginning, but I think that because you are creating your own business, and with any new venture, with any new business,
Right.
there's going to be struggle. You are creating your own business. You are developing. You're having to reach out to your sphere of influence. You're creating a clientele, you're creating a database, and it's all from scratch. So it's very stressful, and I'm sure you can relate to this, but I get people reaching out to me all the time, saying, hey, I'm thinking about getting into real estate. What do you think? It looks
the time.
it looks like there's a lot of money, and it looks easy. And I'm like, okay, slow down. Let's back up a little bit. And so I have to tell them, hey, it's tough. The first 5 years are rough. Unless you have your parents were in real estate, or you know what I mean. You're already born into that. If you're starting from scratch, there is not a lot of people that will help you. There's not people that are just gonna say, hey, this is how you do it. It's very difficult. So you have to usually pay for that, or you have to give up a huge part of your commission
Exactly.
in order to get that training, and you got to put massive action and effort into it the first 5 years.
Yeah.
But after I'd say 5 to 7 years, you start. It's a snowball effect. All those clients, they start referring you. They come back and referring you to their family and friends, and then it kind of takes off. And then you can lay back a little bit.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah, and that's very true. But then a lot of other factors. Now that I have a 1-year-old baby, it's like the usual 10, 12 hours that I used to put in, it no longer applies.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So there's all these things that start, coming at you from different directions.
Yep.
that it maybe income wise it becomes more stable, but it's still a roller coaster and time management and
Right.
and things like that.
And
So-
technology is always changing too. So
Exactly.
you have to constantly be adapting and understanding how the technology is changing. We got ChatGPT now, which is like
Right.
artificial intelligence is changing everything. We really don't know what's
What's gonna happen?
going to happen.
Is this
You know what I
are
mean?
we in the Terminator movie?
So yeah,
Is this Skyfall or what's it called? Skynet.
Skynet, Terminator.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of things, or just the market in itself. So going back to you know, what we were mentioning in the beginning of the episode, do you ever think about, you know, how your life would be if you hadn't gone the entrepreneurial route? If you would, you know, if you would have gone to Mr. Garcia, if you would have
Principal Garcia.
Principal Garcia, you know, to come to the ASB office.
I do, man. I do, and that's come to my, you know, to my mind often. So, you know, I do think about that, and yeah, it would be interesting. And you know, thinking about it right now, I think I want to say number one, I wouldn't be making as much money for
Right.
sure. You know, because I know what principals are getting paid now, and I'm making more than that, thank God. I wasn't always making, you know,
Right.
like I said, it took me a couple of years to really get there. First couple of years was just awful. Like I was making, pretty crappy money. You know, I've been doing this for 17 years now, and so now definitely financially wouldn't be as profitable. That's one. Number two, I'd be in that like 9 to 5, you know, kind of, I wouldn't have the freedoms that I do now.
Right.
And to me, that is huge. I would pay money for freedom.
Right.
And I think that is probably the biggest, to me, the biggest noticeable difference. I can schedule my own appointments in real estate right now. I can, if I want to go for a bike ride, you know, do my training
True.
for my triathlons. I can wake up, do it in the morning, do it in the afternoon, like
Right.
whenever I want. You know, I'd have to definitely be a lot more structured. It would be a little bit more difficult. I'm not married like you are. I don't have any kids yet. I'm still single. So I do have a lot more flexibility, but I can't imagine if I was married having the 9 to 5. That would be tough, man. And I'm not shooting anybody down out there that has the 9 to 5. It's very admirable and respectable.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm just, you know, speaking for myself, I'd feel a little bit more constrained, you know. I think those are the two biggest things. Income, not as much flexibility in my schedule. The freedom is a big thing. And one other thing, I think one difficult thing, and I'm going to be very honest, is the taxes. Is in real estate, we're 1099, and so you have to be extremely responsible and organized with saving up taxes, and so that has been something that has challenged me a lot over the years. Whereas if I had been a W-2 earner as a principal, it'd be produced and deducted automatically. I wouldn't even see it. So you have to be extremely disciplined as a 1099, as you guys probably know. Those are probably the three biggest things. What about you, man?
Yeah, and you know, on that, maybe that's something that we can do down the road. You know, bring like a tax expert, you know, to talk about, you know, different strategies that we can use to, you know, maximize our net and at the same time, you know, organize ourselves so that, you know, because as real estate agents and entrepreneurs, you know, this is something that if we don't take the reins on that situation with the taxes, it's so easy to be like, wait, what? Oh, yeah, I got to pay taxes, you know. That one time a year, you know, when you get a letter from the IRS, hey, you haven't filed. Jesus Christ, I haven't filed.
Yep, been there, man.
You know, you call your CPA, hey, so there's this thing about, you know, I got this letter about having to file. And then your CPA, you haven't filed? It's like, Jesus. So, yeah, that's definitely, you know, and it's funny because I think we talked about this with another fellow agent, our buddy Gabe, and he was telling us the same thing, that one day he just got a letter, you know, you owe this much, and it's like, oh, Jesus. So I think it's very common for us as entrepreneurs to go through that, you know, and that's one of the reasons, again, why we're doing what we're doing here, so that we can get that leg up and for those that are barely starting their entrepreneurial journey, you know, make sure that you have all your ducks in a row.
Absolutely,
from the get-go.
Right. And I will say one thing real quick, it is common for the young folks out there. They say that it is normal for for anybody to change their career paths at least 2 to 3 times in their life.
Right.
So don't beat yourself up. One word of advice, don't feel like you have to know what you're going to do once you get into college or in high school. Just follow your heart, follow your passions, jump into something. If you fail, who cares? Try something else. and explore. It's okay to explore. That's normal. I mean, I did that with the principal real estate things, and here I'm at now. You did it too.
Yeah.
And so that's perfectly normal. It's fine. It's
Yeah,
part of the process.
It's part of the process. I mean, the kind of life that I would probably have if I hadn't started the if I hadn't gone the entrepreneurial route, it would be something very 9 to 5 kind of thing, but there will be a significant lack of fulfillment, and for me, being an entrepreneur, you start every day from zero. Right. I gotta go. Whatever I eat, I gotta kill. And for me, that's highly motivational. For some people, it's very scary and they don't want to go that route. And that's, like you said, that's completely respect. That's, we respect that. That's,
right.
that's, it doesn't make you less or more,
Sure,
it's
right,
just,
right.
it's just the way you're wired.
Sure.
But the whole concept of, eating what you kill, it's for me is the most, the biggest motivational force that I could have as far as when it comes to work. But the caveat to this is that now that I'm married and now that I have a my wife and I, we have a little baby girl, it's like, yeah, it's cool to and it sounds very sexy, very primitive. Yeah, go kill so you can eat. Well, now I gotta make sure that I keep that income consistent. So I don't know. I mean, I think there would be because like you said, there's a lot of freedom when you're an entrepreneur and
Right,
the way you control your hours. And because I've been in the blue collar situation, and it's not fun, in the sense that it's like, oh Jesus, I don't have enough time to enough paid vacation days
Right.
to
Freedom, man. Comes back to freedom.
To go on that 4-day weekend trip or whatever. But then when you're an entrepreneur, it's the other side of the coin. Like if I go on that 4-day trip, how
Right.
much money am I not making
Right.
by not working?
Correct.
So
Right.
so it's kind of like being between a rock and a hard place. But for me, it's been something that is just fulfilling.
Right.
And that it's the way that I'm wired. And my grandfather was an entrepreneur. He started a paper selling company from door knocking and selling paper on door to door. And my great grandfather, he was a very entrepreneurial kind of guy that he did all sorts of jobs, and then he ended up doing okay for himself. So it's one of those things that maybe maybe it's just part of my my DNA in that sense. But, and going back and tying this, because like I said, we are going to jump into that entrepreneurial, that series on entrepreneurship.
On our next episode.
On our next episode, yeah, exactly.
So be ready for that.
But one of the things that I want to touch on is what you were talking about, last time and how, we ended. Well, not so much how we ended, but it's something that really resonated with me about the stuff that you learned from your dad. So if you had one chance to have a conversation with your younger self
Right.
at a particular point in time, so, talking about, because I think you were saying that, one of the things that you learned from your dad was about, being a little bit of a macho and not asking for help and stuff like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So if we could expand on that, that would be awesome, because I guess the question is, what advice would you give a younger version of yourself,
Right.
and why? And
Yeah.
and it has to be at a particular point in time, and tell us why
Right.
in that particular point in time.
Yeah, and just to kind of refresh what Carlos was saying in our last episode, I was talking about, my dad, kind of teaching me in a sense to kind of do it myself, figure it out, not really, ask for too much help. He was really and he kind of carried that around with him a lot. Like if I ask questions like, oh, come on, like, figure it out, do it,
Right.
you do it. And he was a very loving father. He was, but sometimes he had that little bit of that pride, and I think he wanted me to. He was trying to show me toughness,
Right.
which you see very often in the Mexican culture. In the long aspect, in the long terms of things, it really kind of it crippled me in a little bit in that aspect because I didn't ask for a lot of help in high school and college, and I get stuck with stuff. So I'd say to answer your question, if I could go back in time and meet my younger version at a specific moment in time, and what would I tell myself? What would I teach myself?
Right.
And the first thing that comes to my mind is after college.
Okay.
I was 21, about 21, 22 when I graduated. I was very involved in church in high school and college. After college, though, is when I said, you know what? I think I'm going to take a break from this whole Christianity thing.
Now, you grew up in the church, or?
I didn't. No,
You didn't?
I did not. I mean, I went a little bit to Catholic church as a boy, but my parents didn't really go to church very often. I actually just had this yearning inside to want to know God more. I don't know where it really came from, but it was always in me. It started at 13, and I was just always very interested. So when high school was very involved, college, I don't even think I ever drank in college.
Okay.
I was really involved, and I actually led a Bible study my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And so it wasn't until after college is when I said, okay, I'm gonna take this break, and I just want to go out and explore.
Sure.
Let's
See
go
the world
explore.
out there.
Let's drink.
Right.
Let's
see what
go
happens.
out and meet girls. And it's like, okay, and I think it was just wanting to know the other side of the world. I felt kind of in this bubble,
Right.
where I would study the Bible with other men, and I felt like I couldn't relate in a lot of ways.
100%.
And so I don't know. I still look back and sometimes, and I'm like, was that the right decision? Should I? But regardless, that decision led me to a very destructive path. Not initially, but it was like a snowball effect.
Right.
My mind was always like, I'll do this for a couple of years and I'll go back to church, and But let's be honest, that generally does not happen.
It doesn't happen that way.
Because once you get a taste of that apple, it's a damn good apple,
Right.
And you want more of it. And so that's what happened, and eventually it just snowballed, and it got into to really worse things,
Right.
And so that involved drugs, and I'm a very vulnerable open book.
Sure.
And I don't really care what people think. I will always be honest and always have that integrity. And I think if somebody wants to judge me for that, so be it. But that's the truth. Luckily, I'm not in that place. I'm in a really great place now. And I'm clean. I've been clean for years, and so
Can you pee in this cup?
don't test me. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, my life was it got very destructive, and I was not in a good place for a very long time.
Wow.
And so, going back to answer the question, I think of one word: integrity. Integrity. And to me, integrity is being genuinely honest, an honest person with strong values. If you look at it in the Webster Dictionary, it's about that. It's
Right.
being honest, being an honest human with strong values, strong principles. And so, to me, what that means is not just being honest with other people, is being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Having integrity with yourself, with other people as well. And also standing up for what you believe. That's probably the biggest one there.
Right.
Is standing up for what you believe. And so I think my whole life, I have always, this is something I actually just recently learned. I know that I told you I went to this leadership retreat. recently.
Right. Yeah, you were talking
And
about
so I just was in Texas about 2 weeks ago, learned so much about myself. And it was specifically about leadership. And integrity kept coming up. And so what I realized going back and rethinking my life and how I grew up and everything, in high school, I was a people pleaser. And I think a lot of people are. A lot of people are just, because it's a safe route.
Exactly.
People pleasing is safe. It's being the nice guy. And
You want to be popular.
yeah, and I did have a lot of liking in high school, but that was because I was a people pleaser, I was nice to everybody. I got bullied a lot in middle school.
Okay.
So I just had this this desire to just Never want to be like that, be bullying other people.
Not
If
go
I
through
saw
that.
other people bullied, I would step in.
Right.
But I was always nice, and everybody would always tell me that, like, Alex, you're so nice, you're so nice, Alex. I even did. After college, do you remember the MTV show Next?
Next.
It was a dating show, and then it was like a couple guys are on the bus, and then they go on a date with a girl, and then she goes on a date for a couple minutes, and if she doesn't like you, she says next.
I don't remember it, but it
I
sounds very
was on
familiar.
that show after college.
way.
Yeah. And so I got scouted like in downtown. I was at a bar, and someone said, "You want to be on an MTV show?" I'm like, "Hell yeah,
Sure.
dude."
Yeah.
And so, anyways, the reason I bring that up is because I got nexted by the girl on the show.
Right.
And so on national television, they ask her, they say, "Hey, how come you nexted Alex?"
It's too nice.
He's too freaking nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, I mean, it was a nice way to go out. But at the end of the day, it's like, man, I keep getting this nice
nice guys
guy,
finish
this
last,
man. and it's like at the end of the day, this has been my conclusion. Nice guys, yeah, they're nice.
Right.
But nice guys are not the most respected.
100%.
Nice guys, being nice will get you through the door.
Sure.
But if you want people to respect you, you have to speak up. You have to be opinionated. You have to share what your thoughts are. You have to speak up. Mm-hmm. And you have to be honest. And that is integrity.
Right.
When you see a situation that you don't agree in, you speak up. You speak your mind.
Right.
You're in a group setting with a couple of guys, and something, they want to do something that you don't agree with. It's not in line with your values and principles. You speak up. But a lot of people cowered. Mm-hmm. A lot of people cowered, and because they want to play it nice, they want to play it safe.
Of course.
But nobody follows the safe guy. You're just nice.
And
people will respect you
Right.
when you speak up.
No, and like you said, I think you said you hit the nail right in the head. Standing up for what you believe.
Right.
Because nowadays, we live in the world of the rule of the law is political correctness.
Right.
So, you don't want to touch on topics that deviate from political correctness because, God forbid, you'll get yourself into trouble. So, and maybe this is something that we can touch on in the future because I believe that 100%, and that's why I'm very in my social media and everything. They're like, no, don't stand up for your stuff in social media. That kind of keep it on the DL,
right?
And talking amongst your I'm gonna whatever I stand up for. I'm very as well. I'm very transparent, and you'll see that in my social media. But a lot of people say that's the death of your whatever it is, in
career,
this case,
sometimes.
in this case, real estate career.
Right.
I don't care. I'm gonna stand up for what I believe in at the end of the day,
Right.
respectfully.
Right.
I'm always going to try and come from a place of love.
Sure.
But yeah, that's 100%. And playing it nice is only gonna get you too, not far enough.
Right, right. And you know what? That's a good point because when you are your genuine self, when you have that integrity with what you stand for, with your values, your principles, you are going to attract the right type of people that deserve to be in your life, that want to be in your life,
and that you can connect with.
Right. And you're going to push away the people that you don't connect with. And that's okay. And I think that's probably the biggest misconception is what it takes to be a leader. A lot of people think leadership is everybody liking you.
Right.
And that is the biggest lie ever.
Yep.
Being a leader is having, I hate to say the word haters because everybody uses that word. I don't know why I don't like it. But people who dislike you. And you have to get comfortable with that.
Right.
That is the ingredients. Those are the ingredients of a leader. You are going to have people that dislike you, and that is okay. Right. Because when you're a leader, people respect you. So you got to ask yourself the question, do I want to be liked by everybody but not respected? Or do I want to have integrity with myself, speak up, be honest, be an honest man with what I stand for, and be respected?
No, that's awesome.
Right?
That's awesome, bro. And that is That is great advice, and actually, that's very similar to the advice that I would give myself. Because going back, it's funny. This is, and the reason that I'm gonna say this is so that I can jump into what the advice that I would give myself.
Yeah.
Transition into that. This is gonna be this is my 20th year in the real estate industry. So last summer, I started thinking about, all right, what do I, 2023 is gonna be my 20th year. What do I really want my brand to represent? And that's
Right.
when with the marketing guys, I started working, and I was bouncing it off of you with the real estate amigo concept.
Yeah. I remember that.
And I'm like, man, in the beginning, I'm like, God, dude, like that sounds cheesy, huh? And you're like, well, maybe. And I'm like, no, it is, but
It's catchy now, man. I think we both thought it was kind of cheesy, but I'm like, it is kind of catchy, man.
the thing is that it started kind of haunting me, quote unquote, because the what the real estate amigo represented is kind of the direction that I wanted to take, and I'm not gonna go too in depth into that. But so when I started in real estate, and when we all start in real estate, we all want to sell the multi-million-dollar house.
Right,
You
right.
know, we all, there's this joke in the industry that as soon as you pass your real estate exam, you go and you put on your email signature, luxury real estate,
Top 1%.
yeah, top luxury agent.
1% in your neighborhood.
1% in my mom's eyes. But that's because that's the thing, that we all want to sell those luxury properties.
Right,
And
right.
if you talk to any real estate coach, they're gonna tell you the same thing. They're gonna say, in order for you to sell luxury, you gotta sleep,
Right.
breathe, and eat luxury. You
Right.
gotta play where they play.
Yep.
You gotta dress like they dress.
You got to network with the big rollers.
You gotta
the
hang
heavy-
out where
heavy-
they hang out.
Yep.
You gotta so all of a sudden, and real estate is a beautiful industry. It's my industry, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But it's very prone to be an industry where you're doing this whole keeping up with the Joneses thing.
Right, right.
So the advice that I would give myself,
Yeah.
back when I started in the industry is, don't play that game.
So
Because
going back to what time specifically?
probably when I started in the
When you
industry,
started,
like
okay.
2003, 20-year-old me or
Got
whatever,
it, okay.
or whatever. Don't play that game, because the whole reason why I was playing that game and that I played that game for so many years, it was also to be liked. Because if you're liked, then people are gonna want to buy from you,
Got it.
and to keep up with the appearances and stuff like
Right.
that, and to keep some friendships that even though you don't click with them that much, because they're high network, that kind of thing,
Right.
and what I've come to find out, with the time is that the luxury sales that I've done, it's been like the most simplest people,
Yeah.
the most down to earth people,
Right.
that I could ever think of.
Yeah.
So at this point in my life, and me launching the whole real estate amigo concept is, I'm taking the mask off. I'm not playing that game no more.
Right.
I'm staying true to myself.
Right.
Some people are gonna like me, some people are not, and I'm at a point in my life where I'm okay with that.
Right. Right.
But I think it does take, we're saying this now in our 40s,
Right.
but it does take some time to mature into that.
Yes.
To grow into that. When you're fresh off of college or fresh off of high school, I think you have to go through the motions and through the phases where you come to that point and like you said, you were being honest with yourself, or I forget. Dave Goggins, the Navy SEAL guy, he does this thing.
Love him,
where-
man. Awesome.
Yeah, so he does this
Dude's
thing
a beast.
and he talks about the mirror of truth.
Mm.
That every morning he looks at himself in the mirror and he starts cussing on himself and
What?
look at you, you're fat, you're disgusting. Like that's how.
Oh, when he was fat?
Yeah, when he was
'Cause
fat.
he was, he was a big boy, right?
Yeah,
he was
yeah,
like
yeah.
300 pounds. I
He was
think,
like
right?
300 and something, and
Yeah.
he had to drop like 100 pounds in like 4 months.
Wow.
Like something crazy like that. So in order for him to keep pushing himself,
Yeah.
he would do this thing where he would do the mirror of truth, where he would tell himself, and that is
And that's integrity. That's
That's
going back to
integrity,
being
yeah.
honest with yourself.
And
Yeah.
that's something that we need to do. It's very unpopular,
Right.
in today's world, know,
Right.
and so that's one of the things that for me, building the Real Estate Amigo brand is also saying, you know what, this is me.
Right.
If you don't like it,
Who cares?
who cares? Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's in a nutshell, that's the advice that I would
Yeah.
give myself, and maybe. So I thought about two things. What advice would you give yourself? And at the same time, if you had a chance to change something about your past,
Right.
what would it be? If there was something that you say, you know what, I think I would change this about my past. I think I would change this. For me personally, it would be my relationship with my dad. Because my parents got divorced when I was 3. Never got to see my dad again. One day I get a phone call, and they're like, "Hey, your dad is really ill. You better come down to visit him because he is, things are not looking good." So I'm like, "Oh, Jesus!" I think it was like on a Wednesday or something like that. So here I am. I'm like, "Man, I haven't seen the guy in, 30 something years."
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden I got to go down there and kind of just and the whole thing. I just wanted to tell him that I was cool with him.
Right.
That we were good. That no harsh feelings.
Right.
Nothing like that. So, I talked to him. I think because it was 2018, my wife and I were dating back then. And we're like, all right, it's Wednesday. And, the earliest we can get out there, it would probably be on Friday morning. So we're heading over, Friday morning because he lived in Mexicali. And, as we're driving, my mom texts me because my dad's sisters were communicating with my mom, and she was communicating, everything to me.
Right.
And my mom, she's like, "Hey, so he passed." So it's like, man. So,
Wow.
and when I get, so instead of me going to the hospital, I have to go to the funeral house.
Right.
And it's like, right, nothing's happening today, Friday. Just, they're going to do the funeral tomorrow, Saturday.
Right.
So I'm like, all right. So here I am, in front of this guy, that I hadn't seen in 30 something years.
Wow.
And there's a, the coffin right in front of me. So, and, my aunts, they're like, this is your dad.
Wow, man.
So it was a very touching moment in the sense that, what I started thinking about was that, there's all these people that have all sorts of weird issues with their parents, and it's because my dad doesn't get me.
Right.
It's because I don't want to see him. But the moment he's no longer there, and this is probably something that you can relate to as well.
Right.
You feel it.
Yeah.
You feel that point. And the crazy thing about this is that when my because I didn't have a relationship with him, so.
Yeah.
When I started asking my aunts, I'm like, well, how was he? Oh, he was like this, and he was like that, and he liked to do this. I'm not kidding you, brother. It's like they were describing me.
Really?
Yeah. It's like, wow.
Isn't that crazy? And you had never met him.
I never met him.
But you developed a lot of the same characteristics as him.
Exactly. It's like they were describing me. So I'm like, I missed out on probably having a great relationship with the guy that could have been my best friend. And the whole reason, because his wife came up to me and she was drenched, like she was hurting.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Carlos, why how come you never called?
Yeah.
How come you never reached out to him?" And I'm like, "Well, it's because I just thought that he didn't want nothing to do with me." And and she's like, "He thought the same thing about you."
Right.
And I'm like, Jesus,
man.
Here are two guys that we could have been the best of friends. We could have had the best relationship, and we didn't go through that because we just assumed.
Right. And do you think that comes back to maybe the ego, maybe a little pride, or do you think what do you think it would be?
On my end, it was just
Or maybe fear? Was it
I think it was mainly fear.
fear?
You know, mainly fear because, you know, I would hear stories from other friends of mine that they would, you know, like they would, you know, let's say that they hadn't seen their dad in many years.
right.
You know, they would knock on the door, and the guy would be like, "What's up? How can I help?
What the hell do you want?
Yeah, what do you want? I ain't got no money." You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
So,
Or fear of rejection.
yeah,
Which I think is a
exactly.
very common thing, and even for a father, you know, like,
Yeah.
is my son gonna? I mean, maybe I wasn't there. Is he gonna love me? Is he gonna
Right.
accept me?
I think we were both exactly on the same boat.
Yeah.
And we both missed out on just having, you know, great relationships, you know, me with him and him with me. So, I mean, and I know that I just threw that out there, but in your case, like, if you had a chance to change something about your past, what would it be? Or would it be a case where you'd be like, no, because if I would have changed something, then who I am today,
Right.
it would be a completely different person.
You know, my first initial thoughts when you asked that question, because I didn't expect you to ask that in the podcast, so I'm caught off surprised, but that's a good thing. You know, I like that, you know, these raw conversations. But the first thing that came to my head was what you said is I probably wouldn't change anything, because at the end of the day, what the experiences, the good and the bad,
Exactly.
have created the man that I am. And sometimes I feel like people who have had it too easy, and this is just my opinion, sometimes they're not very strong men.
Exactly.
And I think some of the strongest men out there have been through the mud, been through the grind,
Right.
have gone through the battles. Yeah, and I've gone through a lot, man. I've gone through a lot of shit. And I've made a lot of dumb mistakes.
Right.
A lot that I'm not proud of. But looking back, reflecting back now, and seeing how it's allowed me to be grateful for who I am today, it's allowed me to be more of a grounded man, to also be able
Stay
to
your ground.
relate to other people. You know, some of the bad decisions that I've made over the last 10 years, I can use these experiences and stories to help other people, and I have. Like, there's two people in my life now that I'm helping with. You know, obviously I'm not going to go into names or anything, but you know, one's alcohol, another one's drug addiction. You know, and so I've been able to share some of my stories and help these men, and I'm holding both of these men accountable in their lives. And one of them's married with kids and everything, and so it's such a beautiful thing to be able to give back now,
Right.
You know, to be able to give back and help somebody else go through it. Because, I mean, but I would say it wouldn't actually be that. To answer the question, I would actually say, if I could go back, there is one thing. If I could go back and change something, it would be how I view finances. Finances is a big one, because in my opinion, it was not taught enough, and I still don't think it's taught enough
100%.
in school. Like, there should definitely be a class on finances, savings, you know, how to invest, like all those things, and it's not taught. So you know, we're going out there. First day in college, I remember there was people passing out with clipboards, passing out applications for credit cards.
Right.
I'm like,
It's
come
crazy.
on. I mean, I didn't think about it then. I was like, yeah, sign me up.
Yeah.
And it was like a Star Wars credit card. I'm like, hell yeah,
Star
I love
Wars.
Star Wars. You know, I didn't care about anything, and
Right.
and so, you know, I wasn't really taught about, you know, expenses and saving and not using credit cards. So I would go back and really educate myself in that area. Maybe take a Dave Ramsey class or something like that.
Sure, anything
You
just to
know,
get
like I
some
think
direction.
everybody should take a Dave Ramsey class and learn finances. But learning how to allocate my money, I would definitely not use credit cards. I would completely eliminate credit cards from my life forever. Only use cash, and take on that type of approach. Learn to save, learn to invest, and buy real estate immediately. As soon as you can, invest in real
Oh
estate.
yeah, that's
100%.
100%.
That's kind of what I would say, brother.
No, and it's awesome that you say about, you know, that you're talking about not changing anything because it made you in the person that you are today. And
Right.
I read once that we humans are like arrows in a bow and arrow. That
Right.
the greater the regression, the greater the resistance, the hardships that you've gone through in life, the further the progression.
Got
you
it.
know,
That's a good analogy.
The
I love
further
that.
you can go. My brother, has been amazing.
Yeah, I think it's about that time, huh?
I think it's been not because it's our podcast, but it's another amazing podcast, and everyone should definitely listen to it. And we're gonna start the new series on entrepreneurship, starting on the next episode. Any closing thoughts?
I think we wrapped up. I thought we brought a lot of powerful points, man, a lot of good stories. So I appreciate this conversation, man. As always, brother, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. And yeah, I think we did it,
Likewise. Likewise, my brother. So, and I couldn't be more excited for the direction and the voice that the podcast is generating. It's something crucial, for there to be people out there that are, that have integrity and that are standing their ground, that are staying true to their values and beliefs. So,
absolutely.
So that's amazing. So, I'll see you next time, my brother.
We'll see you guys later.
See you
God
guys.
bless you.